Hi, I'm Lucy Steigerwald for Liberty.me and also for Politics for People Who Hate Politics. And this is a very special episode of the ladder devoted to paranoia, conspiracy theories, and the occasional cryptozoological wonder. With me today, I have a lot of exciting people, including Franklin Harris, who's making noise right now and isn't even here. But let's see who we got here. We have Joe, my brother, who is not that great, but we like him. He does technical things for the Stag blog and other things he doesn't like to discuss on the internet. Terrible, terrible things. We have Zach Fontaine, who is a blogger for Rushmore Beekeepers and a musician who writes weird, interesting songs that I enjoy sometimes. We have Seth Wilson, who blogs at Cult Western. We have Franklin Harris, or an approximation thereof, who is the assistant Metro editor of the Decatur Daily. I got it. And we have Jesse Walker, who is, of course, our most expert paranoid person. And Jesse is the something editor of Reason. He switches. Books editor, managing editor, I don't know, senior editor, one of those things. And he's also the author of Rebels on the Air and United States of Paranoia. Legitimately forgot the title of it as you held it up because I'm sick and confused. Oh my God. Okay. I like that we're hemorrhaging viewers right now. This bodes so well. I love it. Okay, general introduction of things, and me muting whoever's making a ruckus.
My dogs are...
All right, I'll allow it because dogs are good.
I'm sorry.
If you guys ever feel like you're being loud, you can always mute yourselves for a while, though. And we were supposed to have Dan Beer with us, and we can't find him, and so I think the conspiracy theorists got him. Yeah, I got that sense. All right, guys, let's get down to it. So the slur against libertarians, right, is invariably, well, not caring about poor people is a classic, but being paranoid is probably second, probably they're neck and neck, those two slurs. But I think paranoia isn't necessarily a slur. I tried once for Vice to rehabilitate the image of paranoia and said, tried to get across that there are actually worse things than being paranoid. Even though science and, rationality and things that are true are also nice, paranoia and random bullshit can also be fun. Basically, I just want to talk in general about the connection between libertarianism and paranoia, both in the way that we, if I can flatter us, and are being smart and not credulous and not YouTube commenters sort of way, the way that we might enjoy paranoia and conspiracy theories, and the way that people who ostensibly are libertarians might believe in conspiracy theories. And, just speaking to the general tie between libertarianism and paranoia, if there is one, if that makes sense. Legitimate crickets chirping. Very nice. That's good.
Well, Jesse, you should probably go first.
All right.
Your whole thesis is that paranoia and conspiracy theories are part and parcel of every ideology.
Yeah, I should let you speak for me.
That was pretty good. Yeah. Already glad Franklin is here. Go on, Jesse.
Yeah, I think the question isn't what ideologies are paranoid, but what are specific ideologies paranoid about, right? I mean, libertarians are more prone to being afraid of the government. Conservatives, they're afraid of certain parts of the government. A lot of them are afraid of Mexicans and Muslims. Liberals are afraid of business. Sometimes they're afraid of rednecks. You can tell a lot about an ideology by what they're scared of. And I think we have the nice sort of pure fear of centralized power. That's we can share that partly with the other groups, but it's the we drink it like moonshine. That's what makes us who we are.
Well, but why is it just because libertarians are not powerful that they get the slur of being paranoid most often? Is it just a failure to realize that everybody is paranoid about something? I mean,
well, I mean, the most sort of déclassé forms of paranoia are the forms where the targets are people in power, you know, who get to decide, or who sort of exude what is or isn't acceptable. Whereas their paranoias don't even get called paranoid until a couple decades later, when you look back and say, oh yeah, right, you were all scared of fictional satanic child abuse cults, and now that we think about it, you were wrong, and a lot of people went to jail that shouldn't have. That got, you know, you're bad, okay, but now we really should be afraid of, you know, vast human trafficking conspiracies or something, because that time it's going to be real. So.
All right. I guess, you know, I had
Daniel Beer just joined this video call.
Daniel Beer, are you here, Daniel Beer? That's a poem for you all out there.
See, he's just a picture too.
God, people, I swear to Jesus, I'm not that technically proficient. Joe can vouch for my inability, and so can my boyfriend. And yet, here I stand, knowing how to use Google. Okay. I think, well, all right. I think the next thing that we should sort of talk about is first of all, sort of the modern internet propelled type of paranoia, like in the Alex Jones type of paranoia. The kind that Daniel Beer, if he's technically proficient, spends his entire professional career trying to refute.
I do other things.
No. Hey, Dan Beer. Okay. Dan Beer is really late and the executive editor of the Skeptical Libertarian. And he's probably very cranky, more cranky than some people here about things that are not true. All right. So everybody calls Alex Jones libertarian, and I think arguably he is. There is a type of libertarian who is paranoid, baselessly in some ways. They believe, you know, in the Illuminati, the New World Order, and that kind of group.
Hey, those are all real.
Yeah.
I actually run all of those groups, so I can testify, at least according to my email.
I believe you about that email. I do. All right. So what's the harm in? Okay. Are those people, the Alex Joneses of the world, are they bad for libertarianism and the kind of real paranoia, useful paranoia? Look, I have a prop. It's the Pentagon Papers. I've never read it, but I have it, so I look smart.
I brought television, VCRs, and Christians.
What is that?
I brought a tinfoil hat.
Me too! Yes!
Tinfoil cowboy hat.
Oh my God, you are the best at everything.
Tinfoil hats just make them able to read your mind easier.
Right?
No, but it's got a layer of cowboy underneath it. So.
Oh, okay. You're all right then.
Didn't science prove?
And I have an original copy of the Necronomicon, and you'll just have to trust me since my camera's not working.
Nice.
Actually, I'm actually glad that Franklin is not on video because it's actually adding to the atmosphere
Found in human blood.
really well. Okay, so how, and this maybe is a Dan Beer question, but all of you, none of you are crazy or dumb. So like, how does one, you know, advocate for paranoia of government, distrust of government, while actually going, but also some things aren't real, and maybe you're ruining it for everybody.
What
Dan?
I would say is that distrust of government is really good and really healthy. But claiming to know things that you couldn't possibly know is never good and never healthy. Whether you're being paranoid about the government or politicians or fluoride or chemtrails or Jews or bankers or whatever, like, you should have as much trust of them as the evidence suggests you should. I mean, trust them only so far, but at the same time, don't claim to know things that are just, you couldn't possibly know what you're claiming. So that's really where I draw the line.
What about a vague, I mean, admittedly, I suffer from a vague sense of I can't. Jesse, you have to say a word
You
so we
can
can read
trust the communists.
that. Oh.
I
Maybe
remember
I'm
that.
gonna look at your bookshelves, Jesse. I bet there are amazing things on them.
I'm impressed. Yeah.
Okay, but what about, say, like, to be all topical for a hot second, even though this is not usually about, you know, like in Ferguson, there are all these new details coming out, right? But you have about the police shooting from last weekend. But you have a whole crowd of people who basically don't trust the police and don't see any reason to. And there's always, you know, I don't know, can you quantitatively prove, you know, that you shouldn't trust the government or a certain institution? I mean, like a distrust unless otherwise clarified, to me, is not a bad thing. I mean, sometimes I sit around thinking, I wonder what really happened with bin Laden. Not that he's been on ice for a decade, but, like, you know, y'all change your story a lot.
Bin Laden's real life was weird.
I don't think of the government as being one monolithic institution. I mean, like, someone who gets a government grant from NASA or something is not really the same as, like, a CIA spook or, you know, the police department in a local county or anything like that. So I try to look at more specifically who it is specifically, the individuals that we should be trusting or not trusting, any agencies and the culture that they live in. I think reasons not to trust the police are that they operate in an environment where they're not held accountable when they do bad things. Scientists, I think, and researchers, their careers are destroyed if they make a mistake in a published scientific paper. You know, they'll lose their licenses if they're doctors and so on. Policemen can do pretty much whatever they want unless it happens to be on video, and then sometimes even then they can get away with pretty much murder. So I think that's why I'm more suspicious of the police than I am of, you know, researchers who get grants from the government.
Yeah.
I think too. Oh well, with like the Alex Jones crowd. Like there's a lot of commercials on Infowars.com. I don't know if you've ever watched a whole lot of it, but like there's no product you can sell young black men that's going to not get them harassed by the police. But Alex Jones has got a whole range of products available to filter Illuminati poison out of your water. You know, the ready-made bunker, you just go sink into a hole in the ground. MREs.
Impressing real talk from you right there. That was.
It all works too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, it's just like Alex Jones is very clearly selling. He has to sell you things to fight the parent, to fight the big bad guy, and like that's. I mean, I don't want to like diss the profit motive on a libertarian podcast.
But yeah.
I mean,
no, yeah.
You know, he definitely has a stake in selling and selling you like this real, all-encompassing threat.
Sure, and Alex Jones, he makes money off of creating fears and then selling people fake solutions to them. And he's not the only person that does this. I mean, I think most of the child safety industry is based on a similar concern. Like, I saw an ad the other day for a GPS tracker bracelet that you can lock on your child's arm. So you take them to the park, you can find them immediately if they ever leave your sight. It was like 3 easy payments of $99.99 or something.
Well, if you let your kid play in the park, the police will find you, though. So.
That's paranoid.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
You can prove to the court that you're not a bad parent. So.
Another thing with like the Alex Jones, I mean, Alex Jones in some ways, I don't know when he really came on the scene, but his brand of paranoia is very like 1990s. It's not.
Or it's older. It's very John Birch.
Yeah.
He's Waco generation. I mean, that's
right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's that sort of '90s fusion paranoia. Like he's coming from the right, but he's reading the left. He's going to pull all the possible elites together. And he's also got that. I don't know what kind of music you listened to in high school, but he has that kind of. When he goes start ranting about, you know, Justin Bieber as part of the conspiracy to make you
Justin Bieber.
I really have this sort of the sense of like the guy, like this band is punk rock and this band, that's the man. They want you to listen to that. So there's a whole bunch of strains going together in Alex Jones. That's very. I mean, I'm sure he had conspiracy theories before the '90s, but he's got the scent of that decade and afterwards to him.
And you know,
Justin Bieber a shapeshifter?
We're gonna check on that.
He wouldn't choose that shape if he were.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, some conspiracies are real, and that's sort of the hook with Alex Jones. Is when he was a teenager, he was able to expose like this large amount of police corruption in his town, and supposedly it all, you know, his sort of worldview evolves from, hey, the local cops are crooked, and then somehow it gets to like the Illuminati are spraying chemtrail poisons over large cities and hypnotizing people with Justin Bieber videos. Like, I don't know how he makes those leaps, but it's interesting to me.
It is interesting, and I feel sort of, you know, the Dan Beers of the world make me feel kind of bad that I find, and then the Jesse Walkers of the world's books kind of console me a little bit in taking a fascination in things that I know aren't really true, but at the end of the day...
I make you feel bad, and Jesse makes you feel better. Okay.
Well, I mean, science, like, I like things that are true. Like, all the stupid shit that's on the History Channel now, I wish they would put it all on the hilarious bullshit channel, and I would watch that channel sometimes, and then sometimes I would watch something called the History Channel, which, if you'll stay with me here, would contain history. Like, but at the same time, the fascination with somebody like Alex Jones is that they're saying things that are, you know, they professes to be true when it's not, and if it was neatly labeled as fiction, it wouldn't be as fascinating because he wouldn't be so strange, and this certain type of person wouldn't be so strange. I don't know if that made sense.
Well, the important thing is that there is a history of hilarious bullshit, and you know, if they could have like a history of hilarious bullshit channel, I might apply for a job.
I think they do. It's the History Channel.
No, it's meta. It's like, this is the history of the hilarious bullshit that people were into at this period, and then before that, though, there was this hilarious bullshit, and I don't know.
Well, that's kind of what H2 has become, because that's the ancient aliens all the time channel now.
And then occasionally
so that's
they
the
have
History
something
Channel.
historical.
That's History Channel 2.
I have to say the last time I remember watching the History Channel, when it was actual history, they showed something like 8 hours straight of Nazi documentaries, and I probably saw out of those 8 hours maybe 5 hours of Nazi youth propaganda. And I mean, I was a bit feverish, but after 8 hours, it's like, man, those kids look like they're having fun. I want to ride motorcycles. So I mean, like,
History Channel is a Nazi conspiracy to keep the Nazi propaganda.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
it was the Nazi channel for a while there.
My entire childhood was like learning about Nazis from the History Channel, and that's another thing Joe can vouch for in our lives.
Yeah, we were forced to watch by our grandfather the History Channel at all times when the Penguin went on. Sports and Nazis. That's what Steigerwald's really into.
That's not untrue. I guess.
Wait, how much is Alex Jones like? How much is his paranoia real? How much was Ron Paul's kind of paranoia real, or is it a way to, you know, sell something?
In the '90s, the Ron Paul paranoia was very pragmatic and very bad idea. You know, with the newsletters and selling to the people, pre-internet people.
Aliens.
So
yeah.
Buying mailing lists from Holocaust deniers and
right.
Stuff to them. Yeah, that was probably a bad idea.
It was
that was sort of
I
the.
don't know how anyone could have known that, you know, ahead of time. But
some things are truly unforeseeable,
like
Dan.
Yeah.
How could we have known?
The Holocaust denier and his money are easily parted.
Well, that's good, maybe. And
well, you talk about the 90s and politics. I mean, Ron Paul is certainly not alone there. I mean, we're talking about Alex Jones's particular brand of conspiracy theory having a 90s flavor to it. And when I think of Alex Jones, I think of one of his 90s precursors, Chuck Harder, who used to have a radio. He used to have a radio network based out of Florida, and his deal was, of course, he would sell you lots of things, among them shortwave radios, where you could hear him and every other conspiracy theorist talk show host who couldn't get on real radio back in the pre-internet, pre-podcast stage.
Was Bill Cooper on that network?
that name doesn't ring a bell.
Behold a Pale Horse.
Yeah, he's a big UFO guy, Bill Cooper.
Yeah,
Okay.
he integrated the whole like Illuminati UFO. Like he put it all together in a big crazier.
Yeah, well now
It's
Chuck
really
Carter,
masterwork.
Yeah, Chuck Carter married the conspiracy theory UFO lore at the same time. He had Face on Mars guy. I'm blanking out.
Richard Hoagland.
Yes, Richard Hoagland. He had on all the time.
Face on Mars.
Yeah, until finally Chuck Carter got burned by a meteor prediction or something Hoagland made and finally dropped him. But the intersection with politics there was Carter was really big into the Vince Foster murder conspiracy.
It's a really boring conspiracy theory, I'm not gonna lie.
Right, and he was on the air. He was big during the Oklahoma City bombing. And so he was mixed up in all of that sort of stuff. And eventually he joined forces with a lot of people who would end up in the Ross Perot camp. People like Pat Choate, who was Ross Perot's running mate one year, and all of those forces.
I didn't expect Ross Perot to come up in this podcast, not gonna lie.
If you're talking about paranoid politicians who believe in conspiracy theories, Ross Perot is your man. I mean, he's like, George Bush is going to ruin my daughter's wedding. And
oh yeah.
If I didn't drop
that.
So here's a guy who was the first true populist conspiracy theory candidate that we'd probably had since the anti-Masonic Party.
Wow.
Oh, you did have all 4 years earlier.
Well,
and I don't know how viable Lyndon LaRouche ever was, but he was. Yeah, and his
Schmitz in 72, but John Schmitz in 72, a Bircher, he got over 1 million votes.
Oh wow!
So none of this is new, is what it comes down to. Even though I still do think of it as a very '90s thing. I guess people who aren't.
That's why I always like the fluoride conspiracy theories, because it always feels very old school, very retro. Because in the '90s, and I know this because my parents are religious fundamentalists. In the 90s, they were part of these like homeschooling mailing lists and things like that, and they were there's like, I think they still have some of them, letters being mailed warning Christians about the toxic fluoride that would turn your children gay or into atheist.
Oh no, not that.
Something.
Did they have like the vaccines with the trackers? Vaccines with tracking chips in it and stuff.
Oh, the number of the beast, right? Isn't that the scanny things of the super?
Yeah, the UPC was supposed to. There's a great YouTube music video about the UPC being the mark of the beast.
That's
very catchy.
70s thing though. That's because that's when those were coming along. Yeah.
Okay, so again, the fact that even Dan has weird conspiracy theories to drop. Like, this question is still for everyone except for Dan, and that is generally what's the appeal of conspiracy theories? To me, all right, in two parts. First of all, the conspiracy theory is why they're interesting on a general sort of folklore level, which is a very Jesse-centric question, but also why people are so prone to believing them, and more about government stuff, the stuff libertarians are used to, because the first time I ever heard, for example, a 9/11 conspiracy theory, which was probably 3 years after it happened, I had these older friends who would talk about weird shit, and we watched this, documentary about it, and the presentation was a little too bum bum, and even then I was like, that makes me less likely to believe this when you're really throwing in my face. But I never heard the theories before, and though I didn't believe it suddenly, it was, 3 in the morning and my spine was starting to crinkle. And to me, what's frightening about the idea of conspiracy theories is what is actually appealing to some people, which is there's this one central thing, there's the Illuminati, there's the Bilderberg, there's the New World Order, and if you can get them, then humankind will be free. And that, to me, is actually much more frightening, and much more sort of, it's all futile, I guess, than the reality of, gee, powerful people tend to be dicks, So I guess I want to ask why the appeal of the one big enemy is actually, I think it's a consolation for some people. And if we sort of differ on that, because we're sensible people.
Well, I thought, if Bush was responsible for 9/11, that would have been a lot easier to deal with than, a bunch of people who speak another language, whose names I have trouble keeping apart, who live in, mountains someplace, and I don't understand what's going on, and I'd just rather have somebody that, is just from Texas. That would be much easier to deal with. Now, I'm not saying that's the reason why people believe that. I actually don't. I'm not claiming that at all. But I think it is something that I know that's the most appealing idea about it to me. Like, wow, wouldn't that be great if it's something I already understood?
Oh, absolutely.
But,
I totally agree with Jesse on that, because it's just such a coincidence that the people you already don't like and don't trust are also responsible for every bad thing that happens. So.
Well, and also that all this bad stuff is the result of rational actors, that people are doing all these bad things for a reason, and it's all building up to something instead of just people are crummy, and sometimes they do really irrational, crappy things for whatever reason. It's easier just to believe no. They're like this war is specifically to get this one thing accomplished instead of just a failure of democracy or whatever.
Or even worse, not just a failure or unforeseen consequence, but contingency and chance and things you just can't keep an eye on at all. It's like when people ask, why do bad things happen to good people, and they need a spiritual answer for why God lets bad things happen. Well, if you have a bad guy like the Illuminati, you don't have to ask why the Illuminati makes bad things happen. They do it because they're in the Illuminati, but it's still your reason why bad things happen.
What's that book, Jesse?
It's pawns in the game. Sometimes I'm just these things people say make me think, oh, I've got something in this stack here.
Again, I really want to.
I just want to see a picture of the actual stack of books next to the chair.
They're witchcraft in the Illuminati. Here's a good one, but you can barely read it. I don't know.
Oh, man.
But we're talking about the one big conspiracy thing, right? Because also we know people conspire all the time. I mean, we know that there were people interest groups that had reasons to want to go to war in Iraq. And it's and there were people in Washington, that's the policy goal they wanted, and they maneuvered towards it. So I mean, if somebody even there's a temptation also, once you sort of get past your basic sort of civics book image of government, to understand that there's an amount of deception and corruption and manipulation going on, then to try to turn it into a movie plot, where it's not just all these different strands of groups that are all trying to fuck each other over and are mostly fucking up in the process because they don't know what they're doing any more than anyone else. Or versus, just sort of like one big Blofeld or Fantomas or Moriarty figure that we can point to and have him die in the last reel, or get away with his cat and he'll be in the sequel.
No sequels.
Basically, my argument has always been that that public choice theory is rational conspiracy theory.
Love it. Go on. If there is more, I just love that.
No, that's it.
That's all. Love it.
By always, I mean I just thought of it now.
I mean, I like to defend the paranoid. I think part of it, I was homeschooled by libertarian parents, right? There's this. I have this background story that's supposed to mean that I am more rational than I actually am. That I might be, crazy religious, fear the new world order type thing. But my dad is fundamentally sort of, he came from suburbia and he likes sports. He has a lot of really average dude tendencies, and yet I was raised in the country. Joe, actually, since Joe is just letting us all talk, do you know what I'm getting at with this though, Joe? We not as weird as we almost should be by demographics.
Yeah, I mean, demographically being homeschoolers and living in the country and, Dad's libertarian views, I mean, it's.
I'm hoping you're about to say, and owning that arsenal.
No, that's the thing. We didn't have guns. We didn't, we were super normal human beings growing up, and I guess that's weird based on how we grew up, but I don't know what it is, if it's dad's kind of suburban, just kind of upbringing.
Mom is from Montana, though. I mean, come on, like.
I can't explain it, because we hung out with sort of Christian fundamentalists and stuff like that, but they were never into the whole conspiracy theory. I think we just missed out, actually, on the whole movement. Somehow we were marginalized.
And I'm secretly disappointed sometimes.
Yeah.
But not really. I don't know.
You didn't watch the X-Files as children?
No, we did that, too. I mean,
oh, okay. That's what helped me.
We
yes,
totally.
I was afraid. I was afraid of aliens, though, so I would watch, like, every, 10 episodes. Otherwise, I'd run and hide.
See, you kids, you just don't know. You didn't get to grow up with In Search Of and Leonard Nimoy. That was the zone. I mean, it's just, Amelia Earhart, was a Nazi collaborator taken out by Hoover. I mean, you just didn't know.
We
did have Unsolved Mysteries. Unsolved Mysteries, Robert Stack in the trench coat.
Is that what I just heard?
We were raised skeptical of power instead of.
And we didn't really get to the rest of it.
Right, we knew who the enemy was. It's the government. We knew the government was the enemy, but we didn't delve into the kind of, outside the margin kind of, conspiracy. In our household, it was a very, real kind of, the government's a bunch of assholes, but it's all grounded in reality. There's plenty of real world examples without having to go into the, whole skeptical of things.
I mean, Joe, I remember Dad mentioning Waco when I was little. I remember watching the TV movie about Ruby Ridge when it first aired, and I remember the trauma of the dog getting shot. And that there's something about, like, I was close to it, but I didn't suffer the brunt of any of, like, the irrationalities and hysteria. So I have this sympathy for the crazy people, and, like, I was looking at this book that I got from Amazon, it's like horribly written, kind of. It's like Randy Weaver ranting about politics like a decade after the Ruby Ridge situation. And I find Randy Weaver fascinating because he's not religious anymore. He has this concrete reason now to, like, be freaked out by the government because they killed, like, half his family. But even, like, the content of the politics, he sort of, like, rambles on about various political issues, and he sounds totally phenomenally sensible about the drug war, and then you turn the page and he talks about the invading Mexicans, and he sounds like, a YouTube comment. Like, there's this, it's like the people who are almost there and, like, they almost get it, and then they have these horrible drawbacks always kind of fascinate me.
It goes too far. It's understandably paranoid about the government and paranoid that they're all watching you and like Orwellian. I saw that, like, words, like, several times in the stories about Ferguson.
Right. Yeah.
But so it's, like, understandable to be kind of, but I think it's once the skepticism is lost, you can fill in the details with all kinds of crazy paranoid thoughts and.
And they can be really harmful, but, like. And Dan has done so much on this kind of thing. The vaccines paranoia is terrible. Fearing Mexicans and thinking they're the ultimate enemy is obviously terrible. But I still have this back against the war.
I'm sorry, can I break in, Lucy? Because
yes.
I just realized that we could get a whole bunch of, like, paranoid, racist right-wingers to fund a massive vaccination campaign in Mexico that would improve public health.
Oh my goodness, that's great.
I'm sorry. I brainstorm from what you're saying, and it could all be voluntary, because they think they'd be contributing to the war. I'm sorry, you were making a real point, and I interrupted.
Right, now and then jump in with this, because when all of these, I was reading all these stories and comments about how the children coming in from Central America were going to spread infectious diseases and so on, and they were all diseased foreigners and whatever. And someone pointed out that Costa Rica's vaccination rate is actually higher for almost every single disease than Austin, Texas, right now. So.
But is anybody coming from Costa Rica though? I don't know if they have any. And I realize that's not the point. I'm sorry, I'm diminishing your point. But
it's really easy to
killed it.
when you're, when you already kind of are sort of racist, maybe. It's really,
I don't know, it's
Just a little.
just a little bit, but it's really easy to devolve into more paranoia about it, kind of as a reason to bulk up your argument over why you don't want foreigners in the country. So when you already have kind of a dislike for something, I think it's easier to fall into a kind of real out there paranoia, not a healthy paranoia. Like,
oh, we totally let them in if they were, if they wouldn't give us all smallpox.
That's right. It's the only problem.
The thing I don't understand about Alex Jones is he's all about preserving the family and traditional values and hard work and all this stuff, and it's like, then why not invite all the Mexicans in? You look at traditional family values, that's the good work ethic and all that. It's like, come on, Alex. I mean, you're not really.
Yeah. That same criticism, of course, applies to numerous mainstream conservatives, of course. Which is much worse.
That's not going to sell the bomb shelters, all right?
No.
I mean, I guess part of my defense is based on, this is interesting, and I've watched too much X-Files, but part of it is this idea. It is the slur of the paranoid libertarian, and me saying, and knowing enough weirdos who truly are harmless, that I'm not usually so, reactionary or but I pick the weirdos. If it's the state versus the weirdos, I do pick the weirdos, even when they're wrong about vaccinations or a brutalist libertarian, as they were called. I have my beloved weirdo Virginian friend. He and I disagree on a couple of things, but he mostly lives his life libertarian-ish. But he's smart. He's not paranoid exactly, but there's this type of person who is a net gain for all of us because they leave people the hell alone. And they're among the worst of the weirdos, the really racist, really just aggressively irrational people. There's the weirdos who might be wrong, but I still pick them over the state. Especially, I don't know. It's a contrarian impulse.
Doing more harm, right?
It would take a long time for these people to be more harmful than the state. It really would.
Right.
Well, I mean, those people vote. I mean, they're not, everyone's kind of weird about one thing or another. I mean, when I look at the polling data, it just adds up so quickly. 10% of people believe that we faked the moon landing, and 20% believe vaccines cause autism, and they're not all the same, 10 or 20% of the population. It's
right.
Everybody and I worry a lot about which of these I'm falling into all the time. But all of those people have these sorts of unsupported paranoias because they help explain so much about what's going on. Because everyone has a sense that there's things that we don't know, and we don't really have time to investigate everything we hear. We take it on faith. My cousin said, my brother said, I read it somewhere, and so we build these filters that that help us explain what's going on in the world. And those people go out and vote, and they vote for closed borders. They vote for getting fluoride out of the water supply. They vote against requiring nurses to be vaccinated. And kids are dying of whooping cough in hospitals. So I mean, some of it is clearly not a big deal, but I mean, some of it, it translates very directly in a democracy to bad policies.
And that's why democracy sucks.
Fringe libertarian weirdos, they tend to have very little influence in politics. It tends to be more mainstream paranoias.
Yes. And that again speaks to the whole everybody's paranoid, but for some reason the libertarians are most often the ones who get that slur, which is
the liberals and conservatives do a very good job of pointing that out you know, as much as they possibly can, as you know, as a way to slander and, you know, keep us down. That's another conspiracy right there.
Well, they control the talking points. And there's also
They, Lucy, they.
Damn it. Oh man, it's
they're already on top. They don't have anything to. They don't have to convert 50% of the population to win an election. I mean, they just have to make the other guy look a little bit crazier than them. I mean, they do it like liberals will do it to conservatives about Obama's a birther and a birth certificate or whatever.
Obama's a birther. Sorry.
I like that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Every day he just looks in the mirror and says, where's the birth certificate? Where?
He's been looking for it for 40 years.
Michelle, like, what are you doing in there?
Oh my god, I can't even. Oh, that's good. That's really good. Okay. Okay, in general, if authority figures stopped lying all the goddamn time, how much would that help with all this? I mean,
How would we know?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Well, if they stopped lying all the time, they would all quickly be voted out of office. So
Oh
that.
Yeah.
Well, they would. Well,
There's that naive
they would
Capra faith in the populace that we know you've always had, Frank.
Well, then we would also notice this.
You know, theoretically.
Well, if they all stopped lying, we would notice the strange silence that had beset Washington D.C. That's like, why is no one talking in the city?
Well, that would be another theory. See, like, you know, if they stop lying, it's like, what are they getting ready for? What are they going to do?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, they stop lying. It's like, sorry, guys.
Well, according to Coast to Coast AM, it's been disclosure year for the past 3 years, so that's what they're getting ready for. They're getting ready for Gort on the lawn of the White House.
Oh, Gort! I keep falling asleep watching that movie. It's terrible. Because it's really good. But I keep being tired and then failing to finish that movie. So I should remedy that. Wow. Okay. At some point, I'm going to wrap it up with an exciting survey about craziness. I guess we can get to that and see if we have anything else to say before we wrap it up. First, what is everybody's favorite conspiracy theory in general? Like, do you have a favorite? I don't know what your guidelines are for that, but all right.
Funniest, most plausible.
Well, plausible is a different question. I think the most awesome, just in terms of story, let's say, or the most hilarious. Anything, just follow your heart.
I think I've told you I'm a big fan of the guy in my book who believed that manholes are there so people can be captured for experiments.
No, that one's awesome.
Wait, that's not true.
With the night doctors, though, right? Isn't that like
that was one of the weird? And the fact is, we don't know for sure that that there were no night doctors. We do know for sure they were not down under the manholes grabbing people. That was this person's own. But yeah, I mean, because this actually had to do with a whole lot of anxieties about white doctors doing secret experiments and dissections of black bodies, and it's not absurd for people to have had anxieties like that. I mean, we know about the Tuskegee experiment and other misbehavior. This version, though, I mean, it stands out as someone taking an idea into a very bizarre and funny direction.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. Franklin, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I think one of my favorites, because it's just so prosaic, is the Procter & Gamble satanic logo conspiracy, where Procter & Gamble products had this little logo that had this sort of moon icon in it. So I forget exactly how it looked, but this was supposedly part of the way the Procter & Gamble company was letting all the Satanists of the world know to use their products, and that they were part of the whole thing, and they were contributing to the cause. And there was a whole thing, and I guess this is another thing that goes back to at least the 90s, maybe older than that. That was, we're going to have boycott Procter & Gamble because they're part of the satanic conspiracy.
Satan, man, he's everywhere. I remember talking to some homeschool friends when I was little, and they were talking about how the night before they'd been at a sleepover, and they started talking about Satan, and then they got so freaked out about Satan that they couldn't fall asleep. And that was quite a moment in life, because I was like, there are legitimately people who sit around worrying about Satan at their sleepovers. And that was, I don't know, that's a strangely memorable memory. Dan, do you have a favorite conspiracy theory? Even though you're the skeptical libertarian.
I think I want to say my favorite overall is just all of the chemtrail conspiracies, because they're just the height of paranoia. It's the air is out to get you. There's no escape from it. Everywhere you go, you're being poisoned all the time. And the fact that it came purely from someone just watching airplanes take off at sunset, and they thought, oh, colors, that's like chemicals and stuff. And then next thing you know, there's a video of a woman on YouTube who filled a spray bottle with vinegar and goes and sprays it around outside her house to neutralize the chemtrails. That was a special moment for me.
Oh dear.
Is that the same woman who has the garden hose that makes the rainbow, and she goes on about the chemicals in our air because?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, now, yeah, you can't make her up. That's. I love that woman. I think I want to marry that woman and propagate those genes.
Yeah, because she clearly has no idea how babies are made, so.
Probably not.
She will think she has been impregnated by gray aliens, for sure.
Yes. Or the air.
The conspiracy theory that I think I laughed the hardest at when I discovered it was originally how I got into skepticism was 9/11 truther propaganda. You know, I read about this when I was in my middle teens, and I thought, wow, that would be really interesting if that was true. And then I spent like weeks reading and researching, getting more information. I realized it's bogus. But then eventually, you know how the Pentagon was supposed to be hit by a cruise missile, not an airplane for some reason, even though they did it in New York. They ran out of planes or something.
Right.
I read truthers on a message board claiming that this conspiracy theory was itself a government conspiracy to make 9/11 truthers look stupid.
I thought the hologram planes was that.
That the Pentagon was hit by a cruise missile and not an airplane to discredit 9/11 truthers.
It's like the inception of
there's so much.
I actually believe that about Alex Jones. I think Alex Jones is a government agent who says a few things that are actually true and mixes it in with just bat guano nonsense in order to completely discredit us.
And that's
Bill Hicks.
I'm like seriously 50% there.
Bill Hicks. Love it. Okay.
No, there was an article about Alex Jones being a government plant. It was like on Disinfo or something, but they had found some phrases he was using that had originated with DARPA. Like this guy who works for DARPA, and very few people would have had access to the documents at the time that he was using these phrases. So they're like, maybe Alex Jones is some DARPA experiment, but I think it's
every major conspiracy theorist has been accused of being a part of a conspiracy at some point.
Yeah, that's how you know you made it. That's when you made it in the conspiracy world.
That's how they have flame wars. You know, I mean, it's you're an FBI man.
I mean, how many conspiracies was Robert Anton Wilson accused of being part of?
How many? Someone knows. You or Jesse?
Well, they would deliberately do all these crazy things to just like throw that air of unreality about everything. Like that's whole the Discordian thing was like, is this one of our jokes or is this really a conspiracy? You'll never know.
I love that. It's so unhelpful, but it's so awesome at the same time.
It's so fun, so funny.
But didn't COINTELPRO include disinformation? I mean, agent provocateurs also, are a real thing in groups. It's another one of those things that reality is somewhere at the base of it, and then it blossoms into craziness.
COINTELPRO was a real conspiracy. It was born of conspiracies, and it deliberately spread word of inaccurate conspiracies. I mean, it's you can come at it from all kinds of angles and make it fit into this discussion. So.
Yeah.
Well, and there's that thing where conspiracy theories are unhelpful when you're trying to talk about things that the government has actually done, and like what they call like deep state stuff. where like the CIA and DEA both having sort of like different cartels as assets that they're funding and things like that. And these are real things, and you talk about them, and then it gets really hard to separate the real things from the craziness, and it kind of does a disservice to actually trying to discover malfeasance.
It does, and that's one reason I feel bad about enjoying the truly crazy stuff. With the 9/11 thing, I had heard that people say that the planes were secretly holograms, trutherisms. That was the disinfo. I thought the cruise missiles was like the real, actual truth of it all. So there's always layers, and there's always something dumber.
No, trust me. I was in New York just last week. The towers are still there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I actually heard one of those guys on a podcast.
Hours there.
It was all scripted.
The engineering capacity it would take to make towers that size is not something that human beings have reached in the 20th century. All right,
that requires aliens.
Unless they have the assistance of aliens, I have to leave that possibility open. I do not believe that they're ever
airplanes alone heavier than air flight.
Oh my God, you guys keep failing at my schedule, but it's great. Dan, you failed. I was doing a survey. We'll get back to Joe and Seth and Zach. I want your favorite conspiracy theories. Joe, you're in the middle, so you go.
Okay. As much as I like all the Illuminati talk on Twitter, which is really entertaining, and like the whole Jay-Z and Beyonce thing is like the leaders of the Illuminati. I've always been into like things that like HARP that were built and like they could be really cool, and it turns out they're like kind of lame. And I kind of wish that it was like a weather modification kind of.
Oh, HARP, yeah.
Like a giant, weapon that can destroy the world. It's kind of disappointing when those things.
Down for budget cuts.
What, Dan?
HARP is being shut down because of budget cuts. Damn you,
That's
That's so boring. It's supposed to be
the work is done.
It's terrible.
Seth, do you have a favorite conspiracy theory?
I really like the William Cooper Behold a Pale Horse and the Alex Jones model with the NWO and black helicopters, but my all-time favorite is the missing time hypothesis, which is that there's a conspiracy amongst antiquarians and academians that huge portions of Western history are fabricated, that Charlemagne never existed. All this craziness, they had to fabricate like the existence of entire like dynasties of aristocrats.
It's not that it's fabricated; it's that these same people, like these ancient Roman kings and the czars, and I mean Israelite kings and Roman emperors and the czars, they're all the same people, and they've been sort of divided into these separate characters. And there's
that's
like serious like Russian nationalist versions where
new chronology.
It was all Russia, ancient. All those achievements were Russia, But there's also the non-crazy czarist ones. I'm sorry,
No, it's funny because there's like the Western European one, and then which is like Charlemagne's fake, and then there's like the really crazy version that's called New Chronology, and that's the Russian version where it's like Jerusalem's really St. Petersburg, and like Tamerlane is really this other guy. It's
now is this because less time has passed in human history than we're all being led to believe? Is that the idea? Like it's compressed?
Yes, compressed, and they have charts where they can show you like, is it such a coincidence that the intervals of this leader's reign is the same as the amount of time that this leader was, and then this one again, it's all the same pattern, they're all the same. Google it. You could spend hours just.
Oh man, that sounds great.
And in the future, Lieutenant Chekhov on the Enterprise will still believe this.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Zach?
The Russians invented that.
My favorite was always probably because of the situation, but my favorite was always that the moon landing was faked.
Classic, yeah.
Mostly because this used bookstore I worked at we always had a copy of Dark Moon. one of those. I can't remember who wrote it, but it was. I never read it, but it was. They had pictures and all kinds of explanations. Yeah, Jesse probably has it somewhere.
He's like run off to
I'm just looking for it. And it would start huge arguments. We had this, sort of the conspiracy section right by the front desk, and I would always put it on display. Seth probably remembers this, and and it's just fascinating how many people are really passionate about, the truth of the,
including Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong will punch you for denying the moon landing in front of him.
Buzz Aldrin was the one who punched.
Buzz Aldrin. He punched.
It's Buzz Aldrin. Okay.
Buzz Aldrin.
Man, there's so many good. I don't even know what my favorite one is because that was such a solid collection of answers. I mean, I like alien cover-ups, but to segue into the next point, what if they're real after all? And I guess so that someone in the future ever watches this on the internet. Oh, it's so good though. I don't want to truncate this beautiful discussion, but I want to wrap it up with conspiracy theory that maybe you don't believe, but you think that it's not as dismissible as some. It's sort of borderline credible. And to shame myself, I will start off with saying that I kind of have seriously considered with Bin Laden that there was something much weirder, not, again, as I said before, not that he was on ice for a decade or that he was never real at all or anything stupid like that, but that there were so many lies and story switches and then, no photos and body conveniently dumped in the sea that I get a little Alex Jonesian about that. My boyfriend's brother-in-law bless him, is really credulous, so he kind of encouraged me to look up 9/11 conspiracy theories, and they were, really unconvincing. The JFK thing, though, I'm going to give the almost credible to the JFK thing, because you're talking about killing one person, a not particularly guarded person, not magic bullet bullshit, not anything super dramatic, but that there could have been, Oswald pulled the trigger, but I don't know, CIA, Cubans, anti-Cubans, whatever. I'm going to give it to that as being almost maybe slightly credible. And let's go back down the line. Zach, do you have an almost credible one that?
The one I always want to believe is, and I know I have the, propaganda behind me, but is the Roswell incident. I don't know if it's coming from, from southern New Mexico, but I read a few books on it, and it just seems like there was so much weird stuff going on at the time of the crash, and I just always wonder about that one. I don't buy that alien autopsy video though.
Oh man, a childhood memory of Fox totally touting the alien autopsy video as real. That was really traumatic for a child.
I was so confused by that. Wait, is that real?
That's my only 90s nostalgia is when I remember shit like that. Seth, do you have one?
I have always suspected, I would not be surprised if the government actually shot down United 93. It was the one that's supposed to be en route to the White House. Something about just when I heard it, it's I had a weird hunch or something. And it's one of those things if you guys did it, you did arguably the right thing. You made a tough decision, but I mean, you made a arguably a good decision, saved a lot more people than you would.
That's a depressing, interesting choice. Yeah.
And I just think, I think if the government the U.S. government actually did it, they would never say that because it would be so hard to justify.
Especially now and stuff. Yeah.
Even though it's if it's arguably a bad but fruitful decision, it saves more lives. I think people have a hard time with that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm tempted to ask why you think it's slightly credible, but that would take hours and hours. So.
And I can't even remember. I can't.
Yeah. We'll discuss that later.
I can't remember what made me think that. But.
The chip told you to, obviously. The chip.
Yeah.
Joe, do you have a credible, slightly credible, borderline credible one?
I don't know. Aliens, Roswell, kind of.
Right on, Joe.
Something that's so unknown, but that it's sort of credible the way the universe is constructed. That it could be, but you know, I don't believe in things unless I actually have evidence, so I can't say that, like, yeah, there's definitely aliens, and they're definitely abducting people and landing on Earth. But that's something that, you know, I think about and wonder about, and, you know, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Everything else, I don't know. 9/11 was. I watched the videos and I wasn't convinced. So.
Yeah, YouTube is just something about conspiracy theorists on YouTube. They're the least convincing people in the world.
Yeah,
they really are.
Yeah.
Jesse, do you have one that you almost believe, maybe a little?
Sometimes I suspect that manholes are really there, so people camped and experimented on. No. So you're shooting for that thing, not the ones that we actually know are true, because there's been like investigative journalism, but that
the embarrassing borderline. Yeah.
I think there's open questions about the Malcolm X assassination. I mean, clearly there was a conspiracy. There was multiple gunmen. So I mean but I consider it thinkable that police had advanced knowledge because of their informants and chose not to act. There certainly were people in law enforcement who were happy to see black leaders killed in the 1960s or otherwise disabled. And people like Manning Marable have made a case that was going on in that instance. I don't think he proved it, but I don't think that's been shut off. And certainly of the big four assassinations, right? I mean, the two Kennedys and King and Malcolm X. I think that's the one that would be that's the most plausible of those stories.
That's the one I know the least about, I think, but that's interesting and seems.
Of course, I mean, he's also by far my favorite of those four, so naturally he's something was going on with, but
yeah, that's right. Franklin?
Well, what you have to understand is that fluoride does not protect your teeth from tooth decay, but it does render you visible to spy satellites.
Oh, coming together now. It's coming together.
No, you landed on the one that I find the most plausible. If I give anything credibility, it's that there is something more to JFK. The thing that always puzzled me about it is, why does Jack Ruby kill Oswald anyway? Is he just that patriotic, a stupid mob thug? Is that it? That's the only thing that makes the back of my brain itch. It's like, why did he do that? So.
To make a really, really cool photo, which is morbid of me, but it's really cool. Okay. Dan, probably the question that you resent as the skeptical libertarian, but do you have one?
No, it's, I enjoy it. I'd have to say that anything that only involves, at most, one person is automatically more credible than anything that involves thousands of people. So we're talking about conspiracies that haven't been uncovered yet, right? So, like, we're not talking about COINTELPRO or things like that. We're talking about potentially undiscovered conspiracies that have not been proven.
Anyone that makes you seems a little credible.
Any of the big four assassinations, I mean, it makes it sound plausible. I don't think the official story about any of them is actually wrong. I think there's just been decades, and if we haven't proven it yet, then that's probably pretty good evidence that, you know, we're never going to know more than we know right now.
I definitely don't think we're going to know about JFK if there's anything to know.
That was something that I really thought, like, it's not really a theory. It's just maybe they did something else that we don't know about, which is not really a theory and it's not really a conspiracy because they're like black ops and shit. Right. When I heard they immediately dumped his body in the ocean, I was like, what?
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean and I think it's okay to say I don't know rather than I do know and it was aliens.
Well, yeah, I mean that is the more honest, if less, arguably occasionally less fun answer.
But there was a pretty credible journalist that said that there wasn't there that said there was obviously more to Bin Laden, that that the whole official story was a sham, and I just cannot.
Seymour Hersh sort of speaking off the cuff, but he wasn't specific, and he has a history of sort of speaking off the cuff, and then he writes the story, and it's not quite as much of a blockbuster, even if it's a good story, not as much of a blockbuster as what he said in advance. So, but I don't think he was trying to imply that bin Laden was really alive or something. It was more that the official story of what happened when he was, killed was not exactly what happened.
And they changed that repeatedly.
That's completely plausible. I mean, that you would tell this more self-serving story of heroism than, so.
I mean,
he put up a good fight or something.
Yeah, there's some dispute, I guess, over where his wife was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, did
and
she
how many
put up a
shots
fight?
and
yeah.
And was he shooting for?
No. Yeah, if he put up any kind of fight at all, they can't let that get out because, I was about to see it.
Oh, there's one more.
One conspiracy that we can all put to bed right here is the conspiracy that Han did not shoot first. Han did shoot first, and he was the only one who shot. So.
Damn right, Dan. Damn right. That's scientific fact.
And I can tell that's true because I've seen a few Photoshops in my time because of the pixels.
It's true. It doesn't even work. The change. Oh God.
And actually, Franklin is probably the only person here who might actually own a copy of the Doctor Who book called "Who Killed Kennedy."
Wow.
Is this something in your collection, Franklin?
It is unfortunately not something in my collection.
I don't know what that is, but I want it.
So you can't.
But I am familiar with the book in question, yes.
I don't know what it is, but I want it. There's also the depressing, damn it, who was that journalist who wrote about the connection between the CIA and drug running and Contras and stuff? And
Gary Webb?
Yes.
The Mina connection thing?
Isn't that kind of true?
Well, it depends on which version. I mean, it's definitely true that there were Contras involved with drug smuggling, and the CIA, they turned a blind eye to what was going on. But then there are these more extensive versions you heard where they were deliberately bringing crack to the ghettos, and Franklin mentioned the Mina one, which sort of brought Bill Clinton into it. So it all sort of depends on like which I mean.
Well, what did Gary Webb actually report?
U.S. assets being involved in drug smuggling, sure, but that's. I'm sorry, Lucy. What did you just say?
Oh, just Gary Webb's original reporting, and he got the media all turned against him and stuff. And like, was he reporting?
Yeah, I mean, he made some errors, but I mean, there was some core of truth to that story. And there have been other. I mean, there is that book, The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, which talked about the ways in which the U.S. intervention in Indochina, we were allied. Not me, Washington was allied covertly with heroin production, opium, production and smugglers. And of course, the OSS got in bed with the mob in Italy in the 1940s. So there's plenty of examples. I mean, that's not at all innately implausible when someone talks about connections between the government and people acting secretly and drug smuggling. It's sort of the question of, is the particular claim they're making backed up by the evidence or not? And Webb had a mixture of what could be backed up and what could not.
Okay. I've been meaning to look up the original stuff.
I mean, that's the least horrifying thing that I've read about the CIA doing in Central America. So there's so many drugs. The people who want drugs. That's great.
That's such a libertarian answer.
And the massacring civilians. I'm a little more concerned about that.
That's just something we know happened. That's no fun. All right. As amazing as this has been and fun, I think that we're going to wrap it up. And the way we're going to wrap it up is that I want you guys to tell me, where the lovely audience can go read your stuff. But I also want you to tell me your favorite paranormal or cryptozoological or what have you creature that is just your favorite one. Because Zach and Seth and I have discussed our love of various creatures, and I couldn't find a way to hammer like Sasquatch into libertarianism yet. Maybe in the sequel to this podcast.
Sasquatch is the freest creature of all.
He was the Libertarian Party's vice presidential nominee in 2004, I think.
Really? Wait, really? Really?
I take him over White.
I believe you. I believe you. No, I believe you. I'm just going to believe you. I choose to believe you. So I'll start, even though I'm the host, so that I can give you guys, you can read my stuff at Rare and Anti-War and Vice and the Stag blog. But more importantly, my favorite creature of this kind, though aliens or greys are great, I gotta go with the Mothman, because I went to Mothman Fest once and it was amazing, and I believe in the Mothman. Zach, what about you?
Mine is tied between the Jersey Devil and Chupacabras.
Nice.
I don't know. I mean, I know they're both little creatures that, like, either eat or suck blood out of small animals, or, possibly children or that sort of thing. Yeah. And you can listen to me or you can read and listen at rushmorebeekeepers.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Seth?
You can find my ramblings at cultwestern.com and at the JackalopTX on Twitter. And if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I do hashtag Sasquatch quite a bit. And a distant second favorite cryptid is the jackalope, but I'm quite the Sasquatch fan.
Good. I've been meaning to ask you for details about that, but I kind of love the mystery of your occasional use of hashtag Sasquatch or Sasquatch Saturdays. So I'm going to never ask and keep it a wonderful mystery, at least for now.
Yes.
Joe?
What, did you say Joe?
I did. Are you asleep, Joe, over there?
Yeah, sort of. No.
Promote yourself. Tell us your favorite creature that totally exists. Maybe.
I don't know. You can find me at the Stag blog every 6-7 months. I actually just read something, so that was cool. And my favorite zoological, cryptozoological cryptid. I don't know. I always wanted there to be sea serpents and stuff, and I was pretty pissed that there's not. Giant sharks, like megalodon. And the fact that there's not kind of upsets me in many ways.
I'm sorry that you're upset, Joe. I truly am. I kind of believed in sea monsters for a while there. I'm still trying to believe. Jesse?
Yeah, so I write for Reason. You can read me there. I also have a piece today at IO9, so I might as well mention that on Discordianism. And I wrote this book, The United States of Paranoia, about all this stuff we're talking about. And my favorite, I guess I can't vote for the Men in Black, right? Because it's got.
No, you can.
But I think actually, you know what? I'm gonna give the new generation a nod. I'm gonna vote for Slender Man.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I love Slender Man but I love Slender Man for particularly meta reasons, because he was a successful, urban legend crafted by the internet, and that's totally badass. So, yeah, in spite of his inciting various murders, I think the Slender Man is a good choice at the end of it all. So, yeah, Slender Man. Franklin?
Well, I write a weekly column that appears at decaturdaily.com and timesdaily.com, or you can just go to my site, franklinharris.com. And my favorite cryptid would be the wee little Nessie and the look over in Scotland. It's just a wee little plesiosaur. Ain't I hurt anyone.
Do you believe in it? Do you believe he's real? She? I mean, I don't know. Actually, I don't know the gender. That was just a. Do you
Ask
believe?
me again after a wee pint.
All right, so it's real. Good to know. Dan?
You can find me at skepticallibertarian.com until the Ron Paul bots take it down with a denial of service attack too. And also sometimes I write for the Freeman magazine. So if you read magazines, you can find me there. And my favorite cryptid is the Mongolian deathworm, which appears to be a straight ripping off of Dune, except saying that it's real and it lives in Mongolia and no one's ever seen it because it'll eat you. And I think that's super cool. And I really want it to be true.
Yeah, nice.
It's Swalia, hole!
Stop being Scottish. No one's here is Scottish. So I just realized as we were wrapping up how many commenters are going to be really angry. We're going to get the Dan Beer treatment. It's going to be great. It's going to be such a pain in the ass. Oh my God, this was a really fun and went on way too long, but I don't regret it because it was really fun and made my day way better, actually my week. So thank you to Dan and Franklin and Jesse and Joe and Seth and Zach. This was amazing. Thank you, audience, if you were out there and if you're out there later watching. I'm Lucy Steigerwald, and this was a bunch of paranoid extremists chatting. So I will see you next time. Bye.
Truth is out there.